the time has finally come. Don't say it, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it.
Kept you waiting.
Oh, how good it feels to be back playing Metal Gear Solid 5. You know, for as much stress as this game gives me, I love it so goddamn much. The last time I dove into this game, I attempted my take of this challenge called the Jarhead Challenge. And for the sake of this video being needlessly long, I'm not going to take the time to explain that challenge here, but you can find more information on the links below. But I mentioned that video because in the comments, I had a few people suggest that I attempt a full no traces run. Now, I don't get into the weeds too much in games most of the time, meaning I rely on my own knowledge to get me through every new challenge my sick mind comes up with. Some of these challenges may be hard out of ignorance or an underutilized system, but I like to keep it that way. I really only ever look things up if I get absolutely stuck. Now, relating this back to Metal Gear Solid V, no, I did not know holding up an enemy has essentially an everlasting incapacitating effect. No, I did not know you could speed up the lockpicking animation. No, I did not know that it was pronounced Viscount. No, I did not know that. You all get the point. Honestly, I appreciated all the helpful comments and nuggets of knowledge because they helped me come up with my latest and greatest run. And since Mgsv doesn't have one, I'm calling this challenge Mgsv's Unofficial Big Boss Ranking. I also had to, again, split this up into two parts since there's so much to cover and I don't want this video being unbearably long. Okay, so this isn't going to be perfect, but here are the rules. Utilizing the Infinite Heaven mod, I'm increasing the enemy vision and hearing for both night and day to 200%. Like I said earlier, this run is also going to be done with no traces. There's a helpful guide on GameFAQs that I'll link below that outlines what you both can and can't do to achieve a no traces score, as well as which missions are impossible to obtain it on. D-Horse can be brought along solely as transport, as well as using him as cover while riding, but no pooping and no road blocking. However, I am allowing one single D-Horse interference credit that can be applied only once to any situation or mission. This can either be used to have him poop or hold up vehicles, but it's only one between both parts of the series. All missions are now Subsistence, or at least as Subsistence as I possibly could make them. The exceptions are the water gun, the blast arm, and the wormhole Fultons for very specific missions as they're impossible without them. I did my best to try and limit my Fulton use, but it was way too difficult on most of these missions, especially with that 200% sight bonus. I'm also going to be doing these with no retries. Every mission is a start to finish job, no checkpoints. And since I'm going to be repeating missions often, I also set up Infinite Heaven to skip the rides in P-Quad, which drops me straight to the mission at the selected drop point. Now obviously not every mission can be included and is even further reduced by the subsistence rule, which is why I made some exceptions, but here's the full list of missions and their exclusive exceptions for part 1 of this challenge. Oh, and I'm going to be covering these based on the order I did them in, so it's not going to be completely episodic. Alright, now that the rules are out of the way, let's start this challenge. The downfall of my heart and soul was immediate from the very start of this challenge. This particular mission and its enemy patterns are so permanently seared into my memory banks that I could probably now do this mission blindfolded. Don't get any ideas, don't get any ideas, don't get any ideas. Phantom Limbs was left out of my last run because, well, I completely forgot about it. But it's our first real mission after coming back from the dead. If we had any chance of rebuilding Mother Base to her former glory, we were gonna need all the help we could get, and right now, one of our men is being held prisoner in the town of Guante. This first mission puts us in charge of ensuring his rescue. Using D-Horse, I rode through the desert, headed off towards Guante. Along the way, I came across an enemy encampment that I needed to get by using D-Horse as my cover. By trailing wide into the left of this checkpoint, I'm easily able to avoid being seen and continue towards Guante. Shortly beyond this checkpoint was the town Miller was being held in. There were about 10 or 11 guards that were on constant rotations around the village, and through thorough planning, many failures, and sheer willpower, I may very well stand a chance of getting our man back without anyone knowing a thing. Upon approaching the village and from the safety of a nearby ridge, I'm able to locate and track 7 of the 11 guards. This was enough intel for now, so I took to approaching the camp starting on the eastern side of the settlement. There's enough time here to pretty much freely walk up into the back end of the camp, close to where Miller is being kept. As I'm waiting for the guards to pass by, I make a very subtle sound as I'm switching to the prone position, which caught the attention of the dude I was waiting on. Man, 200% hearing is no joke. I took to a nearby structure to wait for him to come check it out, and after he'd come up with nothing in his search, he'd return to his post and I went back to storming the castle. Now there are 2 stationed guards up here for me to keep track of. Now I'm mostly doing all this marking because in the event of an alert, such as say, I don't know, a prisoner going missing or something, I want to have as much intel as humanly possible. With only 2 enemies left on mark, I snuck my way around the buildings into the backside, through the green doors in the middle of the complex, and oh so cautiously squeezed right behind the guard who was supposed to be keeping an eye on Miller. Once inside Miller's cell, I nestled my firmly puckered behind under the bed and waited for this very specific interaction that happens between the guard right outside and another I haven't even seen yet. I wouldn't know exactly when this would happen, but I knew it would, and I didn't want to be halfway out the door with Miller on my back when it did, so I waited to strike like a snake with its prey. After the 2 guards interacted, I took advantage of the opportunity and grabbed Miller. We slipped back out behind the most oblivious guard ever, and as I'm passing through the middle hallway of the camp, I get noticed. It's okay, nothing serious, just keep trucking. I continue ever so carefully around the backside of the camp, going out essentially the same way I came in. Every step had the potential to bring attention to our position, so I moved incredibly slow on my exfil, and once we neared the edge of the camp, the sun was nearly set and I was only noticed by 1 guy, but as I kept moving away from the camp, their interest died and Miller and I were free to link up with Pequod and delta the hell out of here. But no, here come the skulls. The mist came in, making it impossible for Pequod to land here, so instead I had to load Miller up on D-Horse, slalom my way through these skulls, gallop across the desert a bit, then it cleared and I was finally free to get back to Mother Base with my target in tow. So in a hero's way, the necessary prop we need to bring in with us is the water gun. There's no way around this as far as I'm aware, at least under the parameters I'm abiding by. By taking in the water gun, I now have the ability to hold people up, but in the spirit of this run, I only allowed myself to hold up the target only. This way, it doesn't feel cheap or exploitative in any way. Our target this time is a Spetsnaz commander stationed in Shago Village. There are 2 ways to go about this, but only one will give us a no traces bonus, and that was by exfilling the target rather than eliminating him. I hopped on D-Horse and set off in the direction of my target, and once I could see the village from atop a cliff that overlooked it, I began scanning and tracking everyone that I could to begin plotting my route to the target. I decided on a course and set off making a wide loop around the left side of the village. This area has far less guards and was overall the best option. Before inching closer into the heart of the village, I managed to spot and mark the target so I could keep track of which red triangle he was, then continued my creeping assault into the compound. I snuck around the watchtower, avoiding any unwanted eyes, and slowly made my way around the corner of the building to climb up to the sandbags, followed by the adjacent wall. I was now in the belly of the beast. Now it was time to get to a good spot and lay in wait for my prey. Shit! Fuck. Lay down. Yeah. Get in the room. Get in the room. Get in the room. Yes. I think I'm safe. Okay, now it's time to find a spot to lay in wait. As I waited for him to reset from that close call, the sun came up, making this operation a hell of a lot riskier. Either way, here he was now, coming up the stairs exactly as planned. Now all I had to do was not fuck up and I would be just fine. And yes! Okay, that wasn't as stealthy as I would have liked. Now I have the whole base on alert, but they still have no clue what's going on. I started going out the way I came in, nearly fucking up this whole operation by almost getting spotted by the guard checking out the scene of his disappearing friend. All I was able to do now was just back around the corner, hug the wall, and pray. Whoever was looking out for me in this moment, thank you for answering my prayers. During the search into the suspicious looking snake on the ground, CP called the base into alert status, forcing all enemies to drop whatever they were doing and go to their positions. This alert status actually ended up being pretty beneficial for me since it put everyone in a position that was actually quite advantageous. Once I thought I had an opening, I moved into a crouch position and immediately get sussed out by a dude from behind. Pause. Oh, and the dude from earlier came back after attending his post for a whole second and a half. Great. Now I'm surrounded by people suspicious of me. I maintained my position for a little while longer and eventually everyone called off their searches into me and went back to their routine. It was a combination of this and watching my iDroid like a damn hawk that I finally saw my opportunity and took it. I slowly inched my way around and down off the building. I think I made a bit too much noise and attracted some attention to my location upon doing all this, but fortunately I would be long gone before anyone would actually spot me. I now had plenty of cover and no enemies standing in my way. I just had to slither the rest of the way out of here and all would be well. After a while, I was finally comfortable enough to stand up and run away, call for D-Horse, and ride him out of the mission zone.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Oh, and a side note, real quick. Infinite Heaven's tweaks to things like enemy vision can get a little wonky sometimes, leading enemies to sometimes be able to see you through walls and other objects, so if it feels like I'm being extra cautious in certain scenarios, this is why. Over the Fence. Taking place at the Waksin Barracks, Episode 5 is all about getting in, securing the target, and extracting without a trace. Come to think of it, that describes quite a few missions in this game. Regardless, this one was a real treat, full of quick thinking, timing, and most importantly, no traces. As I descended down the valley towards Waksin, there's really not much going on here. None of the enemies are looking this way, so I can pretty much freely sprint down and into my first stop, the culvert that goes under the road. I wriggle my way through here and out the other side to find one dude up the hill a little in his cute little guard station. Look at him, he's so precious. Anyways, I combat rolled along this little row of rubble and it kept me out of his sightlines. I rolled my ass all the way to the climbable rock face that's over here and up the backside of Waksin. I caught the attention of one of the guards down below, but that's fine. I'll be long gone before he would even spot me. Cresting the hill to reveal the barracks, I pop open my scope and tag all the guards I could see, but not wasting too much time since I want to get all the way up to the backside of the building before a scripted guard comes up the stairs and spots me. I know the path of this guard by now and roughly how long it takes for him to complete his route, so I quickly tagged him, hopped in the building, went down the stairs, and tagged the other guard, retracing my steps back up and out the building to my original position. I then waited for the guard out here to finish up his patrol and head off to monitor the other side of the building. This was my opportunity. I hopped the wall and made my way over to position myself just above the guard stationed in my way. He doesn't patrol anywhere, so my plan was to lure him upstairs using my prosthetic arm. Then I would ever so carefully use the other set of stairs to Scooby-Doo his ass and swipe the prisoner right out from under their noses. I got noticed through an open door, but the enemy was far enough away that he didn't pursue his suspicions. However, as I was making my way back up the stairs I used to get down here, I heard footsteps. Not good. As quickly as I could without making much noise, I slank back down to the adjacent room that fortunately had a pitch black corner out of sight from the incoming guard's routine. The bad news was that, in the time it took to wait for him to pass by, the other guard had come back and realized their prisoner was now missing. And just like that, the whole base was on alert. I was still neck deep in the heart of the compound, but I was still able to continue out the way I'd come in, only getting slightly noticed once on my way out. Once I was sure I was clear of any conceivable failure, I called in P-Quad, sprinted to the LZ, packed up my target, and got the hell out.
Amazing, mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
So C2W is unique because, well, you could technically beat the mission before even starting it, but beyond that, it has its very own Subsistence mission baked into the game. However, this mission is impossible to get no traces on if it's truly subsistent. If you bring in absolutely zero equipment into this mission, you have two options: the grenades in a nearby building or acquiring an enemy weapon. You could see how neither of these would be a viable strategy. That's where this handy little piece of equipment comes in, the blast arm. This equipable piece of tech really only has one thing I'm after: the bionic punch. The blast arm is considered a damage weapon, which makes it capable of doing damage. Not only to enemies, but also their equipment. You see what I'm getting at here? So, to use the blast arm, we need to go in as Venom Snake, as he's the only one capable of wielding different attachments for this bionic arm. After dropping into the area and mounting D-Horse, I began my short ride toward the Eastern Communication Post, on my way passing a small outpost with a couple of guards posted up and a truck coming in my direction. This is all avoidable by traveling through the left bank of the outpost, using D-Horse as my cover. Upon reaching the outskirts of the ECP, I spotted a rock face I was able to climb, passing a couple wild dogs. This path led me straight into an overlooking view of the encampment. I took out my scope to get a trace on all the viewable enemies, then went about taunting them from my secret lookout. I did this to try and lure as many guards out of the camp and on a wild goose chase to find ultimately nothing, but it's kind of a crapshoot which guards will come searching for you, and there were two that were much more lucrative to occupy than others, but neither of these two were the ones on their way up here, and since plan A was out the window, I moved on to plan B. What? You don't think I have contingencies? I waited out the duration of the search party until they began their long walk back to their post. Using the now reduced pressure on the base, I found my window to descend down to the base and into the comms building. With a quick sprint towards the machine, I can use the bionic punch of the blast arm and blow it to bits without leaving a trace. Now I just gotta get out of here. I hopped out the back window and slowly crawled up to the closest bit of cover I could find and waited to see how this affected my foe's behavior. One guard did come pretty damn close to catching me, but he's the type of guy who cuts corners in life, so I was safe for now. I tried on a few more occasions to make my way out of the camp, but both almost got me caught. I began looking everywhere for an alternate route out of here, but there were none. I just had to risk it all and hope for the best. Things began cooling down a bit, and after a quick peek at my iDroid, I could tell that the path I intended on taking was clear for now, and it was now or never. Slithering around like the little snake I am, I wriggle my way through the upper area of the base and towards my closest exit. A few guards did get suspicious of me, but none of them actually got a good look. I eventually broke free from any danger and got out with no further problems.
Mission complete. Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Occupational Forces is generally a fairly tactical mission that has you sneaking into an enemy outpost that's built on this kind of cliff area and obtaining some plans for an incoming convoy. Once you do so, the convoy will soon pass through the place, and to get a no traces bonus, I'd need to slip back down the cliff unnoticed, then extract all three of these vehicles with Fultons, which is kinda hard to do while they're moving. However, I won't be doing any of that. Instead, my plan was to ride D-Horse to the furthest location within the mission area that's on the path of this convoy, and using my one-time D-Horse interference credit, I park him in the middle of the road and position myself in a safe spot to wait. I really didn't want to have to use D-Horse this early into the run, but I knew this would be one of the more technical missions I would face, and this was a much easier path to complete it. No other mission that I could see myself using him on would have a net benefit higher than this one, so it was an obvious choice for me, personally. The way I'd positioned D-Horse, sorta unintentionally, was the perfect spot. He ended up forcing the convoy to stop multiple times, allowing me grace from my fuck-ups, and give me time to Fulton all three, mount D-Horse, and exfil the hot zone.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Now, the typical plan for this mission is to infiltrate our way into La Majate Palace and rescue our target Malak. There are a couple other prisoners here I have the option to rescue as well, but Malak is the only target necessary for a completed mission. Once atop D-Horse, I rode over to, at the very least, get my eyes on our target to keep track of him, since he's been loaded up to be transported somewhere in the direction of the Yakuba supply outpost. The transport convoy consisted of a jeep full of enemies, followed by a tank, so there's really only a couple areas that would potentially be a good spot to Fulton out this convoy. One of those spots is very dependent on some AI sheep crossing the bridge at the time that the convoy does, and the other is when they pause for a few seconds right before heading into Yakuba. Since the sheep have a possibility of not being there, and I didn't want to hinge my whole plan on a chance, I opted for the latter. Like I said, I made sure to get my eyes on the convoy before heading off to position myself in a safe spot to lie and wait for my target convoy. Keeping tabs on the movement of the two vehicles via my iDroid, I saw that they were nearing my position, and nervous with anticipation, I watched as the convoy drove right past me and stopped just a few feet away, exactly as I had planned. All that was left to do from here was stealthily sneak over to Fulton the tank, since it would obviously spot me if I didn't, and then once the balloon was attached, I left away into a prone position to hide from the enemies in the Jeep. Now as the driver is making a call into command, I crawl my way towards this Jeep and wait for him to hop back inside before also outfitting the Jeep with some balloons. With the area now clear of enemies and Malak left on the ground, I can now safely pick him up, call in Pequod, and extract with really no complications.
Exfiltrate the hot zone, boss. Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Red Brass is another one of those missions that has multiple avenues to complete it, but only one is really possible under this rule set. For this mission, the only thing we really need is the Afghan Lullaby cassette tape. I rode D-Horse from the LZ to Wilo village, stopping just outside the perimeter to dismount and continue in on foot. The path to my destination is fairly simple. There's a couple guards in my way, but are mostly avoided by staying low to the ground and taking a specific route through the village. Beginning by creeping directly down the center of the village, sticking close to the buildings on the right side of the road, I pass 2 buildings before cutting right and transitioning into a prone position. After cutting in, I begin heading in the direction of this building that has a generator right outside of it. Now, before getting too ahead of myself here, I stop and wait for a patrolling guard to pass by before crossing the stream and moving up to my target. This building is where all 3 commanders will eventually get together and hold a meeting, so using the generator as a stepping stool, I'm able to gain access to the roof. This is a safe area where I won't be spotted as long as I just stay prone. After about 3 minutes of waiting for the other 2 to arrive, I finally have them all right where I want them. As I got up to get off the roof, I was noticed by a guard, but this was my only shot to get all 3. It was now or never. Neglecting my risk of being caught, I proceeded into the building to play the Afghan Lullaby, which surprisingly puts all 3 of them to sleep. Thank God. Immediately, I can hear the guard outside asking their comrades if they're okay. Not sure if they're referring to these 3 commanders or if the lullaby KO'd one of the guards outside. Regardless, I hurriedly started packing up the guards to move them outside to Fulton them out here. One by one, the guards were hauled off, and each time one of the nearby guards would see the balloon and make a comment on it. But thankfully, they never shot it down. I think each time a new balloon went up, their suspicion timer reset or something and would cause their movement to stall as they watched their men being shot up into the air. After all 3 were taken care of, I quickly hid myself in a nearby dumpster to wait for a good opportunity to make a break for it. About 2.5 minutes pass by until I finally have my opportunity. Popping out of the dumpster, I began to exit out the village. Maintaining a crouched position, I made my way towards the closest exit, only being noticed briefly by one of the guards. I wasn't close enough to alert him, so I kept on towards the edge of town, and once that sight marker went away, I felt free enough to break into my final sprint and exit the hot zone with no further issues.
No sign of the enemy. Mission complete, boss. Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Okay, so for this mission, I got a little cheesy with my spawn. But the alternative really is just a long run to the cave base, and yes, there are a few enemies I'd need to make my way around just to hit this point of the mission, but they're easy enough to get around, especially at night. I was mostly just interested in skipping the sprint to the actual mission area. Argue all you want in the comments, but until you go through it 20 times just to fail at the main base as soon as you get there, you won't understand. Bottom line, it's a time skip. Anyway, by choosing this spawn point, I get placed right in the middle of an open area inside the Das Masi Laman outpost. Since I spawned standing up, I quickly hit the deck and began rolling my way up to the base, aiming for the man door just to the left of the main opening. Transitioning into a crawl, I stall at the door to wait out the guard on rotation. As soon as his vision is obscured by a pillar, I continue in, hook a left, then an immediate right. There's a small path up here, but its direct path is constantly watched by a guard. So the audible here is to hook left and climb up this wall here. After getting up this wall, I head into position myself for the next guard rotation. There's a guard who will come out and take the path that isn't afforded to me, but luckily from my position, there was an alternate route that would afford me access to where this rotating guard was headed. Maintaining my low profile, I followed this guard until I came to another cave opening. Upon entering this cave, I discovered a smaller crawlable pathway, and decided to see what was on the other end. To my surprise, I had come out exactly where I wanted to be. Nice. I was now mere meters away from obtaining the honeybee. The only thing in my way now was just 3 more guards. The first one is right on the other side of this hole I just came out of, but after a couple of seconds, he turns to walk inside, and that was my opportunity. After passing this first guy, I crawled further down to where I would encounter the other 2 dudes. I observed their patterns for a little while to see if there was any free openings. There wasn't. These 2 were on a mirroring pattern, meaning when one wasn't watching, the other was. I was going to have to think outside the cardboard box for this one. I kinda got lucky here since as I was doing my reconnaissance, the guard I was primarily worried about getting by noticed me and began a search in my direction. I backed up a bit to get out of his sight, and after he dismissed the suspicion, I clearly saw that this was the key. I had seen that the other guard was facing the opposite direction, so in a 300 IQ play, I trail the no longer suspicious guard back toward his post and break away to enter the ruins from the other side, nearly missing my window. I snuck around to where the honeybee was located, grabbed it, and waited for my opportunity to get the hell out of here. I stood to where I could see the far guard, and I planned on luring his partner over as soon as he popped his 180, and just as I had planned, the guard turned, I knocked my fist, and began my trek back the way I came. I got up and into the tunnel before I was even noticed a little bit. However, since I did garner some suspicion, I took a moment to wait out this little check, then continued up. Remembering the first guard I passed when I got here, I stopped again to verify his position before advancing through the little crawly hole. Once through the other side, and just as I hit daylight again, I'm pounced on by everyone's favorite task force, the skulls. There's two options here, as the skulls don't really count as enemies, which, I think, allows me to shoot them with the honeybee and still get no traces, but I didn't want to risk it. However, I did accidentally get a little too close to one of the zombified guards, and he tried taking a bite out of my shoulder, leading me to have to punch him in the face. I thought that was it. I thought that I'd fucked up and lost my no traces bonus right here, but since I wasn't sure of that fact, I decided to finish anyway and find out. As I was sprinting out of here, I stupidly climbed over a wall, almost leading to my death. The time it took me to climb was enough for the skulls to each dump half a mag into me. Stupid. Anyway, if you just run straight at these skulls, they'll usually run and jump away from you if you get too close. So to avoid any further injuries, I used this knowledge to my advantage and made it out of the mist alive. All that stood in my way now was one last enemy checkpoint, but by hugging the cliff on the right side of the post, I'm able to slip by unseen and ride Pequod to safety.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Cloaked in Silence is pretty much a give me if you have enough luck deposits to offer to the RNG gods. Now, how can you take out Quiet with no traces? Well, normally, CQC is a big no-no for a no traces run, but as I covered in the last episode, skulls are not applicable to this rule. So at the start of this mission, I'm gonna immediately get low and head to the left side to wriggle my way down to the nearby rock face. From here, I can pretty much get up and just sprint all the way down to the river, stopping at this rock right before reaching the water. From here, I'm back into a crouched position, advancing using the tree as my cover. Quiet is still focused on my original position, so realistically she shouldn't see me. Switching my cover from the tree to the hill separating the two of us, I pop back up to a sprint to my desired location, which is this rock here. From here, I waited out the rest of Quiet's patience meter, causing her to jump to her first alternate vantage point. This position, I believe, is scripted, and she will always go here first after jumping down from her tower. I began my sprint as soon as she was on the run, since she's not able to spot me while she's doing this. I beat her there, and as soon as she blazes past me, I slowly approached her to give her one of my patented Diamond Dog boots in the ass. I think from here she has a few different places she could go, but on my previous attempt I'd seen her jump to this nearby pool, so I took a chance in hopes that she would do it again. And what do you know? She did. Once she's at the pool, she does that one thing Edward did in Twilight, which gets quickly interrupted by another swift kick to the leg. Little did I know, that would be it. I was stunned. I was under the impression that it took 3 hits to down her, but I'm not one to question a good thing, so I'll leave it at that. If you saw my last video or are at all familiar with this game, you know that this episode is incredibly easy, if all you want to do is complete the main task. And that's my plan here, so here we go. Dropping on location, I saddle up atop D-Horse and began swinging wide, avoiding Mgsv camp entirely. Once I was clear of the camp and any surrounding patrols, I'm able to just beeline straight to the Viscount's location. The enemy's sure to regret leaving this prisoner to be watched by only one dude, especially when that guy frequently takes smoke breaks, clueless of the dude cutting your prisoner free and extracting him out from under your nose. Once me and the Viscount were free of the enemy's sight, I packed him up in D-Horse, called in Pequod, and got out, all in a mere 5 minutes.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
I honestly hate the Skulls missions. They always just seem like such tedious and temperamental NPCs, depending on which ones you're fighting, I guess. But the force I was up against in Traitor's Caravan is pretty easy to fool. I hopped the back gate to Nova Braga Airport to put myself right where the target truck was being stored. Walking forward to trigger the cutscene, I go prone and begin working on tagging all the skulls, starting with the one on this side of the truck. Then moving around the backside of the building to tag the other 3 and began luring them over to the backside of the building. If you watched my last video, it's exactly the same strategy. After getting to the next building, I went around and climbed the stairs to the other side, where I knew no enemies would be present. I walked back to the original side, now on the second story for better cover, and began knocking to get their attention once again. I think they walk in my direction regardless of if I'm knocking or not, but I wanted to make sure. I rotate from being on the second story and the ground floor a few times, mostly out of boredom. Also, my controller kinda sucks, so in the midst of me constantly knocking, sometimes I would accidentally call D-Horse and he would just show up by my side. Well, at least the skulls don't pay him any mind, so no love lost. After literally 5 minutes of just waiting around for these zombie freaks to limp over to me so I could steal their truck without them knowing, I had my window. Although there was one still stuck out front, I was able to roll my way to the truck, riskily faulting it out, and stay unnoticed without any problems. The only problem now was that my closest exit is now surrounded by a horde of zombies. So I had to quickly come up with an audible, which had me crawling back under the catwalk I led the skulls onto, sneaking into the access tunnel to get past the fence, then pick the lock on the gate over here to ride D-Horse to the edge of the hot zone.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
I'm gonna level with you here. I contemplated for a while taking this one off the list. It was quite the nut crusher. Time after time, it was giving me trouble with no clear way to complete it under these circumstances. I'd combed over every possible strategy, guard lure, and alternate route I could until I had enough intel to develop an actual plan. I'd tried literally everything, but then I had this one run and it all clicked. I acknowledged that the best path was to hook a wide bend around the left side of the village, using D-Horse for cover for a brief moment to pass by one of the onlooking perimeter guards. I couldn't swing too wide or I'd be spotted by a traveling pair, and I couldn't get too close or this dude would see me, so this was my optimal option. I rode around to the backside of this rock formation and went on to make as much noise as humanly possible by sprinting up to the top. Now, this may seem counterintuitive to a fully stealth run, but when you have nothing, you have to use everything. The noise I make running up the rock will trigger these 2 guards to investigate the source of the sound, and when they do, they choose to run the long way around, giving me plenty of time to work my magic. The coast isn't entirely clear, so it's not like I could just beeline it straight to the walker gears and Fulton them out. No, there's still one more guard left here to keep an eye on the merchandise. Well, good thing for us, because today was the day homie forgot to wear his glasses to work. But in all seriousness, I kept one of the walker gears in between him and I to obscure his vision as I crept forward. Once I was close enough, I dropped to a crawl and proceeded to go right to where the closest walker was. Although these walkers had 2 scrawny little legs that my enemy should certainly see me through, he doesn't. Matter of fact, he's not even looking in my direction. This allowed me to secure a balloon to the first walker gear and shift the attention of the onlooking guard to it. Now that his eye was in the sky, I took to the ground once more, waiting on him to duck down and call in command. This gave me the opportunity to reach and secure the second target. Now it was time to make like an Autobot and roll the fuck out, so I could monitor the enemy's new movement since they were now in an alert status. I dropped down to where the other 2 walkers were and sat here for a while, looking over every opportunity. I sat here for a pretty decent amount of time, with no luck finding any in. I even inched a little closer, trying to tighten my window of time and thus open even more opportunities, but even this was far too risky to try. After about 4 minutes of deep reconnaissance, I backed off to think in my only safe area. On my way back to rock, I noticed D-Horse was sitting out in the open, so I mounted him up to tuck him back deeper behind the rock. While atop rock, I check out the surroundings on the other side just to see if there was anything I could use to my advantage. Striking out again, I open my iDroid and I'm simply stunned at what I see. Obviously now, watching the footage back, I can see that it was due to me making a bunch of noise gathering D-Horse to relocate him. I had apparently made enough noise to make the 2 guards I was trying to lead away be led away. Now, pause. I'd like to ask you, Jeremy, that's your name by the way, Jeremy, is this considered D-Horse interference? It was technically D-Horse making the noise that triggered these guards, I think, but is this valid? Let me know. Anyways, noticing that the 2 guards had abandoned their posts, I hurriedly ran over to the 2 remaining targets, attached a Fulton to each of them, and left through the now guardless area where I sent off the first 2. Once I was a safe distance away, I broke into a sprint, commanded D-Horse to come, and got the hell out of here.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Okay, so Footprints of Phantoms was definitely on my shit list of missions I'd rather not do, but Pitch Dark. Pitch Dark was in a whole different league. If Footprints of Phantoms was on the shit list, Pitch Dark was the combination of a really bad Subway sandwich and really good Mexican food being splattered all over the inside of your underwear because you trusted a fart when you shouldn't have. Listen to me when I say this. Fuck. No. No censors on this one. Fuck Pitch Dark. Anyways, let's crack this case together as I guide you through how I made it through this hell and back and live to tell the tale. By the way, I have 15 recorded unsuccessful attempts, totaling up to about 5 hours of footage that's essentially garbage. I'd planned on giving every episode its own storyline, but I ain't trying to draw this whole thing out, unless y'all want that. I could definitely make it happen. Let me know. Anyway, back to Pitch Dark. Probably one of the worst things about this mission is not only that it's a miles-long journey to Methydna, but I gotta skip some cutscenes and fly in on Pequod, making this just a time sink of a mission. The first obstacle I would need to face was a spotlight run by a guard in a tower outside of Bwala Yamasa. By walking this cliff all the way to the very edge, you'll typically avoid his vision. There are 3 outcomes I've encountered going this way. 1, he spots you, 2, he's suspicious of you, or 3, nothing at all. The reason he generally won't see you is because D-Horse spawns in the middle of the road on this mission, right outside this village, and the spotlight is focused on him. Again, this doesn't count as interference because I had nothing to do with him being there, the game placed him there at the start of the mission, and I'm not bringing D-Horse in on this mission. After plopping down and hugging the cliff face for a little while, I reach my marker, which is this light pole, where I know it's safe to get up and run. Once I'm up the hill and on the other side of the road, I call D-Horse for transport and begin my journey to Methydna. There's a couple enemy camps that can spot you if you're not careful, but I found a path that was clear of all enemies and basically a straight line to my destination. Perched atop a cliff overlooking Methydna, I do my best to tag every single person in this facility. I need to have tabs on everyone at all times. This was a critically narrow-windowed operation, and everything had to be damn near perfect in order for it to be successful. This was my mission impossible. Once I'd done all the data collection I needed, I hopped down off a cliff and began creeping into the base, keeping the radar device between me and the posted guard. I stopped in a prone position when I got to the radar, watching the guard's legs to see when he would turn around. The second I would see him start to turn, I began my combat roll to the left and continued to the shadows to wait out the incoming guard detail. I'm not kidding, I had developed internal timers for this mission. It felt like a speed run. I always knew when I was ahead or behind based off some guards' positions. So as soon as these guards pass, I pushed forward across the road, tagging the one guard I couldn't see from my lookout. I hopped up the wall on the other side of the road and made that very guard suspicious of me, but no matter, because I'm gonna be long gone by the time he makes it to where he saw me. I usually have to pause when I get to this point, but since I'm running a bit early and the coast was clear, it was time to advance towards my first real checkpoint of the run, this dumpster here. Now, typically, I'd been using this dumpster as a safe space to hide while I monitored guards' habits with no concerns of being seen, but remember, I pretty much have internal timers on all these guys by now, so I stay outside this time, since I really didn't want to deal with the animation of exiting the dumpster. I thought about going for it outright right at the beginning and jumping into the window from the railing, but it's kind of a finicky animation and doesn't always work for me, so I backed off to wait for another rotation. I was going to attempt something I'd never done before and sneak past them during their rotation. This is super risky, but it obviously pays off. So once the guard that's usually in front of the control room goes into his rotation and passes over the bridge type area, I slink up and get in position for the next rotation. The second he's on the move, I began crawling to the control room and make it in with barely any time to spare, closing the door to prevent any suspicion. I stayed here for a couple of seconds to wait for the guard outside to pass by the window since this was going to be my escape route. Once he was in position, I pressed the button, skipped the cutscene, and immediately jumped out the window, then off the platform. I slowly inch my way out of here and towards the stairs, but the door guard is now on rotation again and I can't risk anything. So I just lie prone, waiting for him to pass overhead, and once he was gone and the coast was clear, I jumped the railing to the stairs below and pressed on towards the fuel tank. Right, I forgot to mention, I had to use Snake and the blast arm since, you know, big thing need to boom boom without real boom boom. Most of the rest of the way was pretty clear due to the base going on full alert ever since I shut down the separator tank. I spent a lot of time up here. I just had to pick the lock, wind up a punch, and get critically injured in the process. It's okay though, Snake can take it. After this event, the game places me right below the stairs with an enemy encroaching my position. I moved to a location I knew I would be safe to wait out his rotation before making my next move, also taking into consideration the locations of all the other guards. I'd come up with a risky play that I'd never tried before, but it would have an insane payoff if I could pull it off. So step one was to get around this first guard. After the guard patrolling above passes, I'm free to get into the nearby dumpster to plot out what would be the best time to move to step two. Turns out the timing would have been perfect had I gone around the time I got into the dumpster. Oh well, better safe than sorry. So getting out of the dumpster, I began to ascend the stairs, but happened to spot a guard heading right for me. Nothing could have made me turn around quicker. I thankfully made it down and out of sight in time, but was worried about the guard that was down here that was going to spot me. Well, this big ol' mess of pipes obscured this one's vision as I successfully waited out the rotation and made it to the top of the stairs. Step 2 complete. Step 3 was in full motion now, and I just needed to get to the edge of the railing and it would be nearly the home stretch. After waiting out the guard rotation, I used the extra time I have and save even more time by crawling through some of this next part, since I know it's safe for at least a little while. Once I started feeling the pressure though, I hopped over that railing to begin the rest of my journey. Man, infinite grip is so OP. Now, I don't shimmy all the way to the corner because there's a guy over there and I would be seen instantly. Instead, I waited until all the guards down the path from me dispersed, then got up off the railing and into a prone position to await my next opening. I was now going to follow this pair of guards as they patrolled around, almost traveling directly in their path. This was honestly the furthest I'd ever been in this mission, so the pressure here was enough for me to shit a diamond. I was freestyling this shit and it was surprisingly paying off until I got up into a crouching position and two guards instantly became suspicious of me. Luckily, neither of them were close enough to see me, but they soon would be. The pair of guards I was following were finally on their way out of here, and I was now able to get down and around a pipe to obscure myself enough to be out of the other's suspicion radius. I knew I had to keep moving, and so I did. Flying by the seat of my pants, I knew I just needed to hook a right from here, head down the stairs, over the rail to ground level, and out the pipe to freedom, just like in the Shawshank Redemption. And of course, as you would expect during a prison break, extra security guarding every way out of this place. Well, they aren't really facing me. I could probably just, yeah, no problem.
Tell me what you gonna do now. Keep rolling.
I just kept rolling till I couldn't roll no more. I rolled and crawled until I felt I could positively get up and run for it. Calling in my old pal D-Horse for transport 3 times, I finally get him to mount up and get the fuck out.
The enemy. Mission complete, boss. Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Holy smokes, my dudes. This was an absolute unit of a challenge to put together. It's been in the making since before I released my last Metal Gear video, and I hope this was enough to earn the title Big Boss. Well, maybe not yet, we still have another video to go, but it shall be mine. I swear it. Anyways, thanks as always for tuning in, and I'll see you in part 2.
I'm so